Hey, welcome to part 4 of my series, Down and Dirty Truths about Chronic Lyme Disease. So today I'm going to talk about the myth that you either have to treat with antibiotic therapy versus natural therapy, that one is, the best way to go and the other is from the devil. People get so stuck on the polarity between treating with antibiotics and treating naturally. And so I just want to kind of talk that through as an integrative practitioner who does both. I think personally, it's a huge pitfall to be very black and white about treating with antibiotics versus treating with natural supplements, herbs, modalities, whatever, rife, ozone, blah, blah, blah. I personally think there is a place for both. And what I get really bummed out about is people who are like so gung-ho or one or the other, that they're educating people in inaccurate ways about it. So for example, I know of some Lyme literate medical doctors who are allopathically trained, so Western medicine, who downgrade anything to do with natural support, natural supplementation, herbal medicine. It's all just antibiotics, antibiotics, antibiotics. Okay, and I think the real downfall there is antibiotics have their place and they can be life-changing. And they do have some impact on the body. They do have some side effects and some things that put more stress on the body. So what I love is the ability to use natural medicine to support the body while we do antibiotics, so that we can have the benefit of the strength of the antimicrobials of antibiotics, but not have detriment to the body. So, I mean, some very basics here would be, a really high quality probiotic. I know some doctors who have their patients on long-term antibiotics, so don't even talk to them about probiotics. Okay, so to keep the gut flora happy, we want sort of good quality probiotics coming in. The second thing would be liver support. Right? One of the possibilities of antibiotic therapy is liver enzymes going up. And so we can use things like, glutathione and milk thistle and dandelion and other liver herbs to help support the liver. Another example there would be nutrition. I mean, if you think that diet doesn't play a huge role in people's recovery from Lyme and how they fare on the Lyme journey, then that's a whole other area. Maybe that needs to be a video into itself because it's huge. It's huge. And so I think that will be another video. So, I mean, the bottom line is that doing antibiotics all by themselves is not necessarily the way to go, in my opinion. These are all my opinions, but this is my opinion. Right? But the other side of the coin is it really bothers me when I see people, like especially proponents of herbal medicines, protocols, whatever, saying, oh my God, you do antibiotics, it's going to mess you up forever. Your gut's going to be messed up forever. You'll be so resistant that you won't be able to use antibiotics in the future if you need them. It's just going to drive the infection deeper into the body. What else do I hear? So many different things that aren't necessarily true, because they're just so like black and white on the natural side of things. So there is an opportunity to have this combination where it works beautifully, because we get the strength of the antibiotics, but we get the protection and the support of the natural stuff. And we can also use natural antimicrobials to kind of boost the effect of antibiotics. Or if there's a co-infection that we haven't got to yet with antibiotics, we can do herbal medicine to kind of start chipping away at that co-infection. I personally think they work really well together. And I will say that the majority of my patients do antibiotic therapy at some point. Okay. I would love to say that I think we can get people well 100% of the time with all natural protocols, but I can't in good faith say that, because it's not the truth, right? There are some people where they do natural treatment for a while, not making enough progress, just sort of frustrating, spending a lot of money, taking a lot of stuff. And then they go to antibiotics and like, wow, their recovery is accelerated. And I'm a naturopathic doctor. I wouldn't say that if it wasn't like true in my experience, right? I mean, I'd love to just be able to do all the natural stuff and that would be wonderful. And there are definitely people who get well with natural stuff. Yeah, don't mistake me on that. But I'm just saying, I just don't like the really sort of strong black and white thinking and the rhetoric around it, because it influenced people then to be scared of antibiotics, for example, or not wanting to do one or the other and not thinking that they can combine both. So there are a couple of things I see while we're talking about antibiotics and telling the truth about stuff. There are things that I see that are concerning to me in that domain that I want to explain. So we talked in the last video or the one before about the Infectious Disease Society and their standard of care of like 14 days of doxy, 21 days of doxy. So the first thing is, I want to call bullshit on that, right? If somebody has chronic Lyme, 14 days of doxy, 21 days of doxy is like laughable. They may as well not bother. They're just in the throes of Herx reactions by then and not through the other side. Okay, I'm going to talk about Herx reactions in another video coming up, so stay tuned for that. So firstly, these short courses of antibiotics are just ridiculous when we're looking at people who've been unwell for several years. I have a patient I'm working with currently who has only been infected since about June. And here we are in November, so a few months. And I still told him it would likely be 3 months of antibiotics. Like, we've got to be realistic about that. So these short courses are for the birds. That's just not really going to go anywhere. The other thing that I see that troubles me is when people are seeing, and this can even be from Lyme literate practitioners, because I was working on the East Coast for a period of time and I didn't have prescriptive authority. So I was kind of trying to coordinate with some of the Lyme docs out there. And I saw this a lot, and I don't understand why it happens. I have a suspicion it may be due to like trying to fly under the radar and not doing too many antibiotics in case the board comes down on them, which is horrible. But here's the thing, the Lyme bacteria can exist in 3 different forms. Okay, we have the spirochete form, we have the cell wall deficient form, and we have the cyst form. And I drew this. This is literally how I teach this to my patients. Can you see? It's a sticky note, and I draw the spirochete form, cell wall deficient form, and the cyst form. Okay. Now, this is imperative to understand when we're looking at doing, especially antibiotic protocols for Lyme. If we go in with a single antibiotic, call it doxycycline, amoxicillin, whatever the case may be. Okay, well, hang on, let me backtrack. There are antibiotics that work effectively for all 3 forms, but there's not typically one medication that will cover all 3. To treat chronic Lyme effectively with antibiotics, you need a medication to address each of the 3 forms. Okay, does that make sense? So what will happen if we do a medication, especially either for spirochete forms, these spiral guys, or cell wall deficient forms that don't actually look like this square box, but that's the way I have drawn them. What happens is they will roll up in a ball and hide. So the bacteria, when they feel threatened, whether it be by the immune system, antibiotics, whatever the case may be, will go into cyst form. They will roll up in a ball and hide. All right. They're not dead. They're very much alive in there. They can even reproduce in there, but they are hidden from the antibiotics or whatever they're trying to escape. Okay. And the reason I bring this up is because when I see someone being just given a medication for the spirochete form, which amoxicillin would be, or the cell wall deficient form, doxycycline, azithromycin, what I'm thinking is, I know what's happening in that person. These bugs are rolling up in a ball and hiding. They're going into cyst form. Now, when I explain the 3 forms of Borrelia to my patients, I do it in terms of like, okay, you've got a caterpillar, a cocoon, and a butterfly, right? Theoretically the same creature, but they look and act very different depending on where they are in their life cycle. It's kind of like this. The difference is that these can go back and forth. It's not just a linear progression from one to the next. So these little suckers can roll up in this cyst form, and then when they don't feel threatened anymore, they come back out and become cell wall deficient and or spirochete forms. And sometimes one spirochete form will go into a cyst and come out as like 3 or 4. They're active in there. So when doing antibiotics properly for chronic Lyme, it's important to cover all 3 forms, right? So if you're working with a practitioner who just has you on amoxicillin or just has you on doxycycline, I would bring this up with them and say, we're a little concerned here. Why aren't we doing this? Okay. Now, to some extent, sometimes people are sensitive and they have to start one at a time and work up gradually and whatever. That's fine. I get that. But don't neglect those cyst forms, please, because I have seen people who were given one antibiotic, seemed to do well, had improvement, were feeling good, went off it, symptoms came back. Now, why is that? Were they not treated long enough? Was it not aggressive enough treatment? Or did their little critters go into cyst form and then come back and, beat them on the ass later, pretty much? Okay, so that's a really important thing to consider. So monotherapy, meaning just one antibiotic, is probably not the way to go. And if you can't tolerate 3 different antibiotics, at least make sure the cyst forms are covered. Okay, some tinidazole, some Plaquenil. Okay, if nothing else, make sure they're covered first. There is actually some research that shows that tinidazole has some effect against all 3 forms, which is lovely. And that only has to be pulsed. It doesn't have to be taken every day. So anyway, I can't get into the, the meds and the prescriptions and all of that stuff. That's beyond the scope of what I'm trying to achieve here. But just know this. And so know that if you're only doing a single antibiotic, then there may be something lacking that you need to, add into your protocol. Not so crucial with herbal medicine, because herbal medicine tends to be a bit more broad spectrum, right? Antibiotics are very specific in the way they're synthesized. Like this antibiotic works by blowing holes in the cell wall of a bacteria. Therefore, they're not going to work on cell wall deficient forms, right? Because they lost their cell wall. So there's no cell wall to bust through. So those meds will be better for the spirochete forms, right? So it's an art and a science all at once. But I see that quite a lot, and it's a problem area. So I just wanted to bring your attention to that. And so then the moral of this story is, don't be so closed off to, natural. If you're more Western and more allopathic oriented, it may behoove you to kind of get a little bit more input about some naturopathic support. And if you're more on the natural end, please just keep an open mind and don't put other people off the therapies that might help them, just because you don't believe it's right for you, or if you just don't think it's good in general. So let's just try and be somewhere in the middle, right? Or both. Maybe not either or, maybe both, or a combination, or at least just, just mentally being open-minded and not being so black and white. All right, so that's it for today. I will see you in the next video.